Hello, welcome to my video. Today I'll be solving question 9 from IGCSE past year paper 06062 October November 2018 series. Solve this equation. Of course, you can start moving your 2 to the right hand side first. After you move your 2 to the right hand side, immediately type this equation in your calculator to obtain your first answer. The sign the power of negative bracket square root of 3 over 2. If you cannot find the sign the negative here, you may comment at the bottom. I will guide you. And usually you have to pay attention to the answer they want you to give over here, like whether it's in degree or is in radians. So in this case it's in radians, so you need to remember to set your calculator in radians so that the calculator will just directly show you your final answer in radians. If you do not know how to set your calculator in radians as well, don't worry, just comment at the bottom. I will guide you. So after you got your first answer, immediately write it down. And after that, you have to consider the other possible answer, which is in other quadrants over here. So usually the first part here represents the angle that you get from your calculator. So this is the first value that you will get. And after that, you need to use this value to manipulate it and then to get the other answer. And in this case, because this is sine the negative 1, you have to look at the quadrant where the answer for sine the negative 1 will be at as well. So in sine quadrants here, usually you have to use the answer that you get from your calculator and then use pi to minus the answer that you have gotten. We use pi over here because we want our answer in radians. If they want our answer in degree, you use 180 degree minus your answer, which obtained from your calculator and is in degree form. This diagram over here, you have to memorize it so that it's easier for you to solve the question. All you have to remember is the quadrant where each of the sine, the tangent, and the cos lay in to help you identify all the answer. Of course, you will first get your calculated answer, which is calculated by your calculator, and then write that down first. Then you'll find your 2 pi over 3, and that's found by using pi minus pi over 3, the answer from your calculator. And these are all the answer that you need to consider. And of course, because they want us to solve x, you have to move pi over 4 to your right hand side again. So for each of these values that you find, you need to use them and then minus them with pi over 4 here to get your final answer for x. So we move on to the second part of this question. Solve 3 secant y equals to 4 cosecant y for the answer between 0 and 360 degree. So before you do anything, immediately reset your calculator so you get your answer in degree form instead of the radian form over here. So after you have set your calculator, you may recognize that secant y equals to 1 over cos y and cosecant y equals 1 over sin y. This is the rule that you have to remember. If you remember this rule, it will make your entire calculation much easier, because all you have to do is to sub in 1 over cos y and 1 over sin y into this equation over here. So it changes from 3 secant y to 3 over cos y and 4 cosecant y to 4 over sin y. After you have changed them, you may start move the bottom part over here, the sin y, to the left hand side, and you do that usually by multiplying the entire equation with sin y. But I just skip that part because It's pretty straightforward that right hand side multiplied by sine y will just cancel out the sine y at the bottom and leave us 4. And the left hand side here, when you multiply by sine y, you just simply put the sine y next to the 3 on top of cos y over here. So this is the form they will be getting. And after that, before we look at the quadrant over here, we can manipulate this equation further by moving a 3 at the bottom to the right hand side here, which you move to the bottom of 4. So sine y over cos y equals to 4 over 3. And for those of you who have recognized that sine y over cos y is equals to tangent y here, you just have to rewrite it in tangent, where tangent y just equals to 4 over 3 over here. When you have reached this point of your calculation, all you have to do is to type in your calculator that tangent the negative bracket 4 over 3 to get your first answer, to get your first angle for this question. So whatever that you have got, whatever you have gotten from your calculator, it will represent the answer in this quadrant. So after you have got the answer in this quadrant, you may look at whether it's tangent or sine or cos over here. And in this case, this is tangent, so you look at the quadrant where tangents lay in, and then calculate using this method, where you need to plus your answer with 180 degree. Because remember, to use this diagram, you first get your answer from your calculator and it represents your answer in this quadrant, but after that you have to pay attention to whatever it is over here, whether it's sine, tangent, or cos. And in the first question it's sine, but in the second question it's tangent. So you need to look at this part of this diagram, and then to obtain your second answer, you have to plus it by 180 degree. So simply plus your answer, the answer you calculated, 53.1, from your calculator by 180 degree to obtain your second answer in order to obtain your full mark. So the 3 mark over here will be allocated for, first, of course, the step that you have gotten to tangent y that is equals to 4 over 3, and then your another mark will be awarded for your first correct answer, and then the other mark will awarded for your second correct answer. So the second correct answer is important for you to get all 3 marks in this question. Moving on to the last part of question 9. Solve 7 cotangent z minus tangent z, and it is equals to 2 cosecant z for any values between 0 to 360 degree. Before you do anything, check your calculator to make sure that your answer is in the form of degree instead of radian. This is very important so that you will avoid careless mistake at the end, just in the case where you have multiplied your values by radian. Anyway, first change as many symbols into similar terms over here. I started by changing everything on left hand side into tangent, where cotangent z will just equals to 1 over tangent z. This is something that I remember, and this is a very useful rule as well. I will write it over here, where 1 over tangent, let's say z, or any values, it just directly equals to cotangent, cotangent z. Sorry about that, but just remember it. It will help you with your simplification and your calculation as well in similar questions other than this one. So after you have changed cotangent z to 1 over tangent z, simply change the tangent over here into a form where it involves the sine z over here. Because on right hand side you cannot manipulate further, you only have one trigonometry symbol. So you change the tangent over here as well as the tangent over here as well. Tangent z itself will just equals to sine z over cos z, and because over here is 1 over tangent, you just have to reciprocate everything the other way around, so it becomes cos z over sine z. And then you continue with your calculation by eliminate the bottom sine z over here by multiplying the entire equation with sine z. So when you multiply the right hand side with sine z, it just eliminate the bottom sine z over here, it just give you 2. And then the sine z over cos z, when you multiply by sine z, you get sine squared z. Just put a square on top. And then over here, the sine z here is eliminated as well. Remember, you multiply sine z on both right hand side and left hand side. And after that, you eliminate the bottom cos z over here by multiplying the entire equation with cos z. As you multiply the entire equation by cos z, here it becomes cos squared z, with sine squared z itself being left unchanged, but with its cos z at the bottom eliminated. And on the right hand side here, it becomes 2 multiplied by cos z, because you multiply the entire equation by cos z. You mustn't forget the cos z over here. And then after that, I change the sine squared z over here into a form where it involves the symbol cos. Because on right hand side here we have the symbol cos, and then over here is cos z, cos squared z, so it's best to change the sine squared z into a part where it involves the cos square, where it involves cos, the symbol. And then make use of the symbol, make use of the equation over here, which you can find on the first page during your exam, on your past year paper, or even your exam paper. Make use of it. Simply manipulate, just simply switch the cos squared z here to the other side. It becomes 1 minus cos squared z, and it just equals to sine squared z here. Then, after you have changed that, you'll start by removing the bracket. Be careful over here where you remove the bracket. Here it becomes -1, and here it becomes positive square, cos squared z, because 2 negative here will give you a positive answer, so make sure you don't make mistakes at that part. Then you continue with your calculation by moving everything on right hand side to your left hand side. So the positive 2 cos z here becomes -2 cos z. And then because here we have 2 cos squared z, so 7 plus 1 cos squared z become 8 cos squared z. And then the -1 here is the same, just copy down. And because we have moved everything on right hand side to the left hand side, the right hand side here becomes 0. Notice that 8 cos squared z minus 2 cos z minus 1 equals to 0 is really similar to this form. It's basically a quadratic equation, except that the x here is being replaced by cos z. So after you have recognized that this is just basically a quadratic equation, you don't have to write this down, by the way. If you know this is a quadratic equation, you can start factorize this entire equation this way. If you need help with factorization, I will make another video on it. Just let me know by commenting at the bottom. In this case, I will first assume that you know the way to factorize this equation, where it becomes 4 cos z plus 1 in one bracket and 2 cos z minus 1 in another bracket, and as they multiply, you will get 0, which means that each bracket over here will equals to 0, and then you will get your first 2 answer for your cos z, which is -1 over 4 and 1 over 2. But it doesn't stop here, because they want the answer. They want us to find z itself. It's not cos z. So from this point onward, you will make use of the diagram we have been using in the previous 2 parts of this question. So in this case, of course, you may start pressing your calculator first, where cos the power of negative bracket -1 over 4 first in your calculator to get your first answer, and write that down first, because this is definitely one of the correct answer you'll be getting. And using this diagram, you know that 104.5 degree here represents your first answer over here. It represents x. Even though here is z, the x over here, remember, it just represents any random number. So notice that 104.5 is definitely exceeding this quadrant, is more than 90 degree, but it doesn't matter. Just you don't have to think too much. Just treat it as the value you'll be using for x. Even though it exceeds 90 degree, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And then after that, you will start looking at the sign, the symbol over here. In this case, this is cos, so you need to look at the cos quadrant over here, where you will find your second answer by substituting the value you'll find using your calculator into the unknown x over here. So 360 degree minus your calculator answer using your calculator, you will get 255.5 degree, and that will be your second answer in a case where your calculator answer from your calculator is 104.5. And you mustn't stop there as well, because you have two different answers for cos z. Another one is, of course, when you press this into your calculator, you will first get 60 degree, and that represents the unknown, the x over here as well. It really doesn't matter whether the x exceeds 90 degree or not. It just represents the number that you have found using your calculator as you type in this equation. And then it will help you to look for the other answer as well within this range, 0 to 360 degree. So in this case, it's again in cos, so you look at the cos quadrant again, and this is the answer you'll find using your calculator. Simply sub in 60 into here, so you get 360 minus 60, which you will get 300 degree. So in the end, you will get 4 different answers for z, and you need to find all these 4 answers correctly to get all 6 marks in this question. But do not worry, you will get marks as you simplify this original equation to this point. Notice that I changed cotangent to 1 over tangent z. This is my method of approaching this question. If you have other methods which in the end you still find the correct answer, then it really doesn't matter. You can go for the other method as well. There are various methods in approaching this trigonometry question. But I will say changing cotangent z to 1 over tangent z, this approach, this first step is more straightforward than the other methods.